Hey everyone, so what you are about to see is my best gardening decisions of 2023. The reason I am inside right now and you're about to see me outside is because I thought the first clip recorded, but apparently it didn't. So I figured I should probably let you know what this video is actually about before you just see me talking. But I like to do this every year because I like to look back and see what I've done either differently or new in the garden that really made a big positive difference. And I want to share that in case it might be helpful to you because I often learn from other people. Sometimes I learn through my own trial and error, but I figured I would share with you my best decisions. And then if there's any that you can think of that you also had this year for your garden, add them below. But with that, now you will see Bethany outside. Well, I had to switch to a new spot because the sun was starting to shine through the clouds, even though it's been partly cloudy and overcast until I started recording, and it's just a little bit too harsh. So now I have, instead of my beautiful garden in the background, I have my broom and garbage can. So at least you can still see some of the morning glory there that I'll probably pull pretty soon. So now let's get back to my best gardening decisions of 2023. The first one, by far, is adding a back deck garden. So we moved in here in May of 2020 or June of 2020, so right at the start of that garden season, which means I gardened here for 3 years without having anything on the back deck. It was just our patio furniture, and then it would sometimes be a little bit of like an overflow for, well, when I planted too many things up here or when I planted melons that sprawled too much and I moved those over to the back deck, but I've never really had a full garden. So I think I got the 3 raised beds along the back wall there last fall. I tried to plant some bulbs to bloom in spring, but they rotted. And other than that, I don't think I had anything in those raised beds until I planted them up for this season. I now have a lot more fruit trees that I didn't have out there. I have many more flowers than I ever thought I would have back there. And it's just been really nice to have that space because that is where I am at the most when I'm outside, because we have the little couch out there and I like to sit there both in the morning and in the evening. So to be surrounded by plants instead of surrounded by nothing is a big change. And interestingly enough, so the original reason that I did the front deck is because the air conditioning units take up some space on the back deck. So I wanted the deck that had more space. But also I thought, I don't want to have too many bees and wasps bothering me while I'm just trying to relax. But I have realized with gardening over time, my relationship with stinging insects has changed. I mean, really for the most part, I think there are some aggressive wasps, but for the most part, they're not bothering you, and they're especially more tame when they are foraging for pollen and nectar. So I never had an issue, even though I had a ton of plants, a ton of pollinators. It's not like they were attacking me or my coffee or stinging me. I've yet to be stung ever in my life. So it was really nice to have the beauty of the garden, not being bothered by pollinators like I thought I would be. Turns out they like the flowers more than they like me, and creating that special space for myself. It was also a bit different from this garden because I tried to keep to a color scheme of pinks, purples, and oranges and whites. And I can now see the difference in a feeling in a garden that does stick to a color scheme versus one that doesn't, like my front deck, but I love them both. So that is definitely my best decision, was expanding my garden. I don't really know where else I can expand it to, so this is pretty much going to be it for now, but it's just been so amazing to have that space, and I'm really excited about what I'm going to do a little bit differently there next year. The next best decision, and this technically started in 2022, but I really saw the benefits to my garden in 2023, was starting to work with proven winners. And I don't mean that in a way where like they pay me or I'm an employee of them. In fact, they don't ever pay for any content or showing their plants that I put out, but they do send me plants. So I went to their creators event November of 2022, and then I also went to another event, was it July? I want to say it was July of this year up in Michigan, which was really beautiful. And I mean, I benefited in a ton of different ways. One, I got a lot of plants that I didn't have to pay for, which is really nice because whatever budget I set for myself for gardening, I go over it anyway, so I don't know why I ever set a budget. But also, I got to try a lot of new plants that I probably wouldn't have tried had they not been sent to me. So because I have a small space, I kind of stick to what I know I like and what works really well. Doesn't mean I have a lot of room for trying new things, but now, like the Superbena and the Lantana, I found some new plants that I really love. So it's been such a great experience. I'm hoping to continue to be invited to these events and have plants sent to me to try out. Oh, the aquapots too. They sent out the aquapots, which I think are going to be available next year. Those did fantastic in my garden. So I'm excited to be able to work with a brand that I've loved since I started gardening, and for them to even know who I am is still kind of mind-blowing, but it's been really great and really exciting, and nothing that I ever thought would happen. All right, next is something that I find really exciting, but I feel like might not be really exciting to most people, but I added wheels to my garden. And by that I mean some of my heavier pots I ended up putting on wheels so that I can move them when they are full of soil and plants. All of my caddies that I have right now are currently under plants, so I'll put in some footage of what it looks like. I have 3 different types of plant stands with wheels or caddies that I got from Amazon. I love all of them, but 2 out of the 3 seem to be a bit better so far. So first off, for my 30-gallon grow bags and my giant pot that has the beach plum tree, this caddy is expandable. It's the only one I could find that was large enough. I think it gets to 24 inches to fit underneath the containers and actually support it without the container toppling over. So that's been really great. I think I have 4 total because I have the 3 grow bags and then the one for my beach plum. If I get some more larger containers, I'll do the exact same thing. I do wish I'd put wheels on the bottom of my raised beds. I definitely should have done that because that would be so nice to move those around, but at least now I'm learning for the future. I also then bought a pack of smaller caddies that were circular, and I put those under some of my heavier pots as well. Easy to move them around, transport them. And then I got some square-shaped ones that I have under square-shaped pots, including my 2 evergreens that you just saw me plant up. There are square caddies under those. Those are the only ones where I've had some of the wheels like break off or the plastic break off. Now the other 2, I haven't had any issues with things breaking. Now I don't roll these around all the time. In fact, I really only move them a few times throughout the season as plants get bigger and I need to shift, and then mostly at the beginning and end of the season as I'm storing them. So I can't say for sure how good the quality is since I don't really move them, but at least the wheels aren't breaking off like the square ones. So again, I will list all 3 below, and I'll put a note down there that the square ones are the ones where I've had the wheel break off. And that was only one of them, and I had 2, so maybe it was just a bad one. What I've also done, kind of related but without wheels, is I've started putting these plant lifts underneath my other grow bags and I think some general pots as well. So something I think I should have been better about, although I don't see any damage yet, is protecting my deck, especially with the grow bags, because the grow bags, since they're fabric, stay moist, and that moisture then sits on the deck, which is obviously not good for a wooden deck. So I put these plant stands underneath all of my grow bags. I have some underneath my pots of the dahlias just to get them off the ground. It also helps with drainage because if your drainage hole is right on the deck, it might not be draining properly, so that lifts them off about, maybe like an inch. So yeah, I haven't, like I said, noticed any damage yet. I do move all my grow bags except for the 30-gallon ones inside over winter. Haven't noticed any issues from where they were sitting during the season, but I figure better safe than sorry. So the wheels and the plant lifts I really like and I highly recommend, especially if you are gardening on a deck. Next is my greenhouse that I used to overwinter some of my plants. I'll be setting this up here soon, but it's from Jardinier. It's like a, half-size greenhouse, so it just comes up to right about where that wall is, so maybe 3 feet tall. I had tried one that was 6 to 7 feet tall, and the wind up here blew it away. Even though I did have heavy pots sitting on the frame, it just ripped the frame in half, so wasn't going to work up here. But the shorter one, I think because it's shorter than the wall, more protected from the wind, and it did a very good job at keeping my tulip bulbs protected from the moisture over winter so that they didn't rot. It's also worked really well for plants that maybe I should be moving to like a garage or shed, but I can't carry them downstairs because they're too heavy. So putting them in the greenhouse has been really great. Again, not just for protecting them from the cold, but also from protecting them from too much moisture, either rotting the bulbs or causing root rot on the roots of the plants. So I'm 100% gonna set that up again. I probably need to do that soon, but first I need to actually clean off that spot on the deck. So that has to happen before anything else, but that's definitely going up. I plan to keep using that until it either breaks or we move and I don't have to use a plastic greenhouse anymore. Next is getting a new herb rack. This is again one of those things that is like a small change in the garden, but I feel like has had a big impact. So in the past, I had a wooden rack that I got from Amazon, and the problem was that the shelves overlapped a little bit. So if this was the bottom shelf, this was the shelf above it, they kind of overlapped, and it wasn't large enough for me to put, I like that I'm doing this with my hands, to put an herb here without it growing into the shelf above it, which meant a lot of my herbs were growing like this. It was just a mess. So I got myself an herb rack, well, I think it's just called a plant stand, from Gardener Supply. Again, I'll link that down below. I'll have in some footage of what it looks like, but this is like just a traditional stair step so that all the plants have vertical space to grow up them. I also think it just looks prettier. It's black metal, which kind of fits into the grow bag color, the pot color that I have out here. So I really like it. I think, I'm looking at it right now because it's over here. I think I'm gonna bring it in over winter. I don't think I have to, but I'm just not sure yet what I'm going to do with that. But I've really loved having it out here. It's made growing my herbs just a lot easier. Next up is supporting my dahlias with pepper cages, or I don't know if they're technically called pepper cages. They're shorter than what I use for my tomatoes, so I use them on my peppers and call them that. But last year I think the first year I grew dahlias, I didn't use any support until it was too late. Then the next year I used just like a stake and tried to tie it with twine, but the plant got too big. So this year I used the shorter plant cages and that worked fantastic. That's what I'm going to do going forward. Not only on that, but I might start incorporating that into some of my other plants, like my zinnias that get a little bit too tall. So I'm definitely going to stock up on those. Again, I think they are from Home Depot, and I'm really bad at estimating heights, but maybe they're about 18 inches tall. So they're not super tall, like I would use 3 feet for my indeterminate tomatoes. And if you wanted to, although I didn't, you could like spray paint them to match the color of your pots and kind of make it look like it all goes together. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. Last year when it wasn't holding all up by the stake, I used to have to come out here near the end of the season and like keep tying things together. So this has solved that problem. Next up is investing in quality tools. And I don't use that many tools in the garden. Container gardening, a lot of what I do is just with my hands, but I did invest in some better quality, like actual metal trowel, metal garden fork, instead of the plastic ones I got from Amazon that broke when I tried to put them through the soil. So I've learned that investing in quality, especially when I don't have that much to invest in tool-wise, really does make a difference. The other tool, which I got from Proven Winners going to the event in November, was the auger. And I don't do anything with that here in my garden, but I did use it on the parkway to plant my bulbs. And that was so much easier because the parkway has 2 trees growing in it. There's a lot of roots, a lot of rocks, so it's much easier. In fact, it was almost nearly impossible to hand dig in there. So that made life much easier. Now, obviously I got the auger for free from the event, but I believe it's between $40 to $50, which for how much easier it makes planting bulbs in the parkway, I would 100% say is worth it. I don't know, again, unless we move somewhere with a yard, I don't think I'll ever need anything more heavy duty or that does bigger holes, but if we ever do move to yard, I'm definitely investing in that because now I realize how much easier that is to do than to try to dig by hand. Next up is something that I did last year, but I want to include it this year too, is turning my sunflower stalks into a trellis. So instead of cutting down my sunflower stalks when I was getting ready to plant my cool season vegetables back in 2022, I had 9 individual single stem sunflowers. I tied them together, and then that way they created a trellis for the peas. But then this year I did that exact same thing, but I also saved the sunflower stalks that I had cut down from the previous year, the spring, and used them as supports both for the sunflowers. So I'm using like 2022's sunflower stalks as support for 2023's sunflowers, and I'll keep doing that. I'm sure over time they'll break down since they are just made from sunflower stalks and the bottom half is stuck in soil, but I've also used them for my houseplants. And this is great because it's hard to find stakes that are the right length. And when I have a giant sunflower stalk, I'm able to cut it down to whatever length I want. So if you have large sunflower stalks, I would definitely save them because you can use them as support not only in your garden, but also for your houseplants. Another thing that's great about this is because they're rough, they have a rough texture. When I use the twine, it sticks to it. So instead of like sliding up and down let's say it was like a bamboo support, it sticks to the roughness of the sunflower stalk. So I've really liked using those. I didn't grow as many sunflowers this year, unfortunately, but I am still going to save all of the stalks when I cut them down in the spring to empty out and refresh the raised beds and use them wherever is needed in my garden. And then lastly was watering less often. And I think I should have done this probably when I started gardening, but we do get a good amount of rain every year here. In fact, usually in the spring and then as we go into the fall when the weather's cooler, I don't have to water a lot manually or with my drip. Mother Nature takes care of it a lot of the time. And then in the summer, there are definitely periods when I need the drip to run and we don't get a lot of rain. But I always erred on the side of running my drip often enough for the plant that was the thirstiest, if that makes sense. So if I had a plant that needed to be watered every day, I set my entire drip system to run every day. This summer, I kind of went between every 3 days or every 2 days, just depending on how hot it was at the time. And then I would water with a hose the plants that needed it more often. And not only does that obviously cut down on water usage, but the biggest issue I have with watering is always overwatering. If there are times when I see a plant is thirsty because I didn't water it enough, I spray it with a hose, I give it a good drink, and it perks back up in a few hours. Whereas if I get root rot from too much water, that's incredibly difficult to come back from, and it usually kills the plant. So for me, focusing more on kind of what is the least amount I can run my drip, so like, again, every 2 or 3 days to keep most of my plants happy, and then coming out here myself and watering just those plants that need a little bit more moisture with the hose has worked out really well. So I'm going to do that again next year. I also think next year I'm going to try to get away from smaller pots other than my herb rack, just because it's a lot easier to manage, it's a lot less water that's required, and some of my containers, I mean, they're so large that they're not even on drip. I water them once a week if it doesn't rain, and that's it. So that's been really nice too. But yeah, watering less. I would say if you're watering every day in your garden, whether through irrigation or if you're watering every pot every day, really see if you need to do all of those plants every day or if you can get away with some every 2 or 3 days. And again, just to keep your plant happier and avoid root rot. So those are all of my best gardening decisions this year. I do feel like as long as the ratio of good to bad gardening decisions increases every year in favor of the good, then I'm doing a pretty good job. I'm always going to make mistakes. Every gardener makes mistakes, so there's definitely some things that I wish I didn't do, which I will share in another video, but these are my best decisions, and I hope that some of them will be helpful to you as you carry them forward into the next seasons. I mean, there's everything. I don't think there's anything on here that I'm not going to do next season because it worked so well in my garden. So let me know if you have any questions down below. Let me know your best gardening decisions this year so that we can all learn and take ideas from each other, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.